It is I, Dan Indigo, and let me tell you something. I am in a great mood after an amazing weekend in Philadelphia. The Chargers are now 3-0 when your boy Dan Indigo attends the game. At this rate, I'm going to need some season tickets. Maybe we'll make a run out of this. The win was the highlight, but the entire trip was excellent. I'll let the Compas tell you about it with another terrific episode of Compas on the Beat. Fernando and Herbert will be joined by LA Times columnist Dylan Hernandez for a boxing discussion. Dylan was ringside for Canelo Alvarez versus Canelo-Plant. The Compas will also recap the Chargers win against the Eagles and UFC 268 with Usman-Covington rematch. But first, be sure to subscribe to Compas on the Beat on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. Then follow us on Instagram at Compas on the Beat. Now, it's time for the best damn podcast in the universe. Play the music, Nando!
Welcome to Compas on the Beat. I am Fernando Ramirez, Chargers beat reporter for SI. With me, as always, my co-host, my tag team partner, Gilbert Manzano, OC Register and LA Daily News. What's up, bro?
Hey, that was a much better what's up, bro, Fernando, because last time we had a podcast, it was 6 a.m, East Coast time. You're like, what's up, bro? You're barely waking up. I've never seen a Fernando like that, lacking energy.
I couldn't be that loud, though. We were in the
you were barely opening your eyes. I think I had more energy than you that day, so that is a rare victory for me. And Fernando, my back is feeling better. We're back home from a Philadelphia trip, a good trip overall. So I'm in a good mood for today's Compas on the Beat. So, yeah, a fun time with you and your brother. Yeah, definitely your brother. I'll throw him in there. Dan in Philadelphia, Dan in Philly. We had a good time searching for cheesesteaks, hanging out the Rocky statue. Overall, I enjoyed myself.
It was honestly a lot of fun. It's funny because I mean, obviously, I told you guys that I took Friday off. Dan and Dago and we had never been to Philly, so we decided to fly out from Thursday night. And it was funny because it was a red eye, and he kept on making fun of me. He's like, "You're gonna fall asleep. You're gonna fall asleep." Blah blah blah. I'm like, "No, I'm not." And so we obviously take off or whatever. And I start watching Fast and Furious 9, and I start falling. Like I fell asleep right in the middle of the movie during all the good stuff. I just completely knocked out, and like I kind of woke up towards the end.
You've seen it already, though,
huh?
You've seen the movie. Why would you watch the same
I wanted to see it again. If I watch something new, I'm definitely gonna stay up. So I was like, okay, I've already watched Fast and Furious 9, so I'll check it out. So I'm like, in one of those, like I'm watching it, I'm like, I knock out. I turn and I look, and he's laughing. Like I'm like, what are you laughing at? He's like, you're gonna tell everybody you did not sleep at all in this flight, and you kind of did. And I was like, oh my god, 30-40 minutes. He's like, yeah, BS. So we just started laughing. So it was the hotel. Obviously, they let me check in at 7 a.m. Luckily, they had a room available. Dan and Dago and I slept for a little bit, woke up, and then went out and started looking for cheesesteaks, going and hanging out and everything. So one of the funnest things that we did that Friday, Gilbert, was we went to go see one of my good friends, Yarisa Abreu. She works at CBS out there as a weather. As a meteorologist. I don't get that wrong, Gilbert. It's a meteorologist. We saw her and her fiance Wesley, both amazing people. We went to go hang out at their place, and they had 4 nephews over. They were crazy playing video games, running around and everything, but it was just a great time. I mean, that's why I wanted to go out there early. I wanted to go see people, say hi to people. We saw our good friend Ricardo Rebel, who's like a little brother to us, so it was cool getting to see everybody. Got to go to the Liberty Bell too. Went to the Liberty Bell. Went to Ben Franklin's museum. Got to do a lot of fun stuff while we were out there. And then obviously we were waiting for Saturday for the compa to fly in.
Yeah, no, I didn't get to do all that stuff like you. I did not see the Liberty Bell. I'm kind of disappointed. I did not. But you know me, I'm a boxing guy, so I had to go see the fictional hero of Philadelphia.
Not fictional.
Rocky Balboa. Fine, Sylvester Stallone. You want to keep it real. And when we got there was a long line to take a picture with the statue of Rocky Balboa with his hands up in the air. So we got in line. You're debating about buying a knockoff T-shirt that said Rocky on it. We didn't do it. There was a guy who was trying to charge us to take a picture of us. We didn't do it either. We didn't fall into these tourist scams. We just said, hey, we're going to stick in this line and get our picture. We did that. Then we kind of made fools of ourselves by running up the steps and dancing and doing the whole Rocky dance. So, and actually, we saw two quinceañeras. They were fighting for a picture position. So I don't know which one won. I think the girl in the blue dress, I think, and there was one in a pink dress. And they had the chambelanes and all their I guess friends hanging out there. And I was thinking they're gonna start fighting. Like, remember that movie Anchorman, where it's like dueling TV stations,
all the news stations.
Yeah. Like, that would be like a big old rumble right there at the Rocky statue of dueling quinceañera. So that was a pretty fun moment there. And then we were trying to find me a cheesesteak because you and Dan had like 3 without me, and I was kind of upset about that. And you try to find this one, and Fernando, you of course chose the one that was closed, shut down. I'm like, dude, just check on Yelp. I would have told you it's not in business anymore. You're trying to deny me a cheesesteak, but luckily, I said, let's walk around. We found like a little pizza place, and actually the cheesesteak there was pretty good, because some people tell me that the big name ones, like the chain ones, they're not that good. You kind of find a hole in the wall kind of thing, and that's what turned out for me, and I liked it.
Yeah, that was my bad. I mean, I was so mad at myself because it was like in the business district, and then our Uber driver was kind of wacky. Like, the dude literally was it felt like we were in Harry Potter and which one was it? It was Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, when he jumps on the no, it was Prisoner of Azkaban. My bad. Prisoner of Azkaban, when Harry's trying to find where to go, and after he's kicked out of the Dursley's house for blowing up his aunt. And the little guy, when he gets on the bus, like, take it away, Ernie, it's gonna be a bumpy ride, and they take off. That's how our Uber driver was.
You got that one,
didn't you? You got it?
Yeah, I seen that one.
Oh,
yeah,
there you go. He got it.
I didn't see the last 3, but I got that one.
We're making progress. Obviously, so like the Uber driver was nuts. We end up getting there, and obviously we start walking around. We finally found, because so Ricardo had told us about Wawa. He's like, Wawa's a place that I go to. It's kind of like, it's an upgrade from gas station food, but it's a little bit kind of like fast food-esque. So I was like, oh, okay, Wawa won't be bad. And then we'll go get a cheesesteak for Gilbert later. Obviously, we couldn't. The Wawa that we went to was closed. We go to the next street, and then we find Giovanni's, which Dan and Dago and I had pizza because obviously we had cheesesteaks earlier. Pizza was really good. And then obviously Gilbert has the cheesesteak, and I was like, hey, how was it? He's like, oh, no, it's good. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. All right. He was able to get his cheesesteak because Dan and Dago and I had been to John's Pork Roast earlier in the day, which was recommended by Darnay Tripp, who's a sports anchor here in NBC San Diego. He's from Philly, so he kept on giving me all this, like, oh, go here, go here, go here. And I went to John's. John's was the best cheesesteak I've ever had. Like, the thing was just delicious. It was incredible. I had their pork roast sandwich. It was good, but the cheesesteak was incredible. So it was delicious. But yeah, no, we were able to do that. Then we went back to the hotel. I was in a food coma. I knocked out for about 2 hours. And where did we go, Gilbert?
We went to Xfinity Live, I guess, like the sports bar center for Philadelphia, to watch UFC on that big screen at NBC. Was it NBC Sports Arena they called it?
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of bars, like a PBR bar for the country people, a bunch of like little bars next to each other. So it was a fun little atmosphere to watch UFC 268. It's a little disappointing they didn't have boxing, on one of the many TVs there. But as we'll hear from Dylan Hernandez later, it's not a good time for boxing. People are not as interested. So I'm not surprised that UFC got kind of the bigger TV that day.
Gilbert was disappointed too, because some guy comes over, and I think he had an Irish accent, and he tells Gilbert, oh yeah, we're gonna put boxing up there too. He's like, oh really? He's like, yeah. He's like, we did the same thing for the Wilder Fury fight. And yeah, they did, but like, Wilder Fury, I mean, no knock on Canelo or Canelo-Plant, but but the UFC fight was obviously bigger than the Canelo-Plant, I guess, in their eyes. So obviously they were gonna go full force with that. And they had like the Lakers on, SDSU football. They had a lot of other.
There was a lot to watch after 10 p.m. on the East Coast, which I think is kind of cool. But then it's kind of like, oh, what if I'm tired that day? I won't watch any of this,
Well, dude, we left the place at 2 in the morning is when the fight was over, and that's when we decided to leave. It's funny because we both thought, or all three of us thought, Dan and Diego too, that as soon as the fights were over, that people were going to stampede out. And we turned around and we looked, everybody was chilling still, and we're like, oh wow. I'm like, all three of us were already tired, ready to go to bed, and these people were out there chilling. But it's funny the way that Philly has their stadiums. It's a way that I think every city should have their stadiums. It's all three connected: the basketball and hockey, baseball, and Lincoln Financial Field where the Eagles play. All three of them are in a triangle position where each of them are right there, and then right in the middle is that sports bar, which was just incredible. It was awesome. So it definitely was a great atmosphere. I thought it was awesome. I thought fans were really into the fights. They were really getting the guy behind us, Gilbert. Jesus, that guy. He kept on but he did it more during the Rose fight. During the Usman fight, he was quiet, but during the Rose fight, he's like, I was like, oh my god, dude. I was like, come on, like you need to chill out a little bit.
Yeah, there was a lot of fans for Rose Namajunas, Thug Rose, to keep it short, including your brother too. Your brother was really cheering for Thug Rose. But I'm gonna pat myself on the back. I predicted the two winners of the last two fights. I said Usman's gonna win and Rose is gonna win. I got both right. I know your brother's disappointed in the main event, but he was really happy about Rose winning. And we had a couple of drinks together. Your brother and I, what do we have, a couple of whiskeys? So
Yeah.
Dan and Diego and us kind of, you know, we made peace that night, had a good time. But yeah, it was a good card there. You know, Usman-Covington part 2. A lot of build up to that fight because Kobe's a trash talker, and Kamaru Usman is probably the best in the world right now in the UFC, and he really proved it, man. But I'll give a lot of respect to Kobe Covington because he got dropped pretty bad twice in the second round, and he stood toe to toe until the fifth round. They were going at it, and you could tell Kobe was getting some big shots on Usman, but I think Usman had a little more power, did a little more work. But Kobe, like in the Canelo fight with Plant was kind of like, he tried at first, and then okay, I can't beat Canelo. I'm done here. I'm gonna go in defense mode. With Kobe, he took his licks, and he's like he never kind of like backed up or retreated. He kept going, trading in the center of the ring. So that for me was a fight of the night. I know people were more into the Rose fight. Maybe because I was watching Canelo at the same time, my freaking phone kept buffering. But when I really got into the main event, I'm like, oh, this is a really good fight. So I enjoyed myself that day.
Yeah, no, it was actually a really, like you said, it was a good fight. I was really surprised by Colby. I thought that as soon as he went down I think it was in the second round. As soon as he went down, I thought, crap, okay, this is gonna be over probably within the next round. And he was able to he was able to hang around until the end. I thought he really made a fight out of it in the fourth and fifth round. Obviously, Usman had still won the third one, but I really thought that Colby really made it into a fight. And I tip my hat off to him. I mean, dude, that should not have been as close, which obviously I think two judges scored it 48-47,
Yeah,
I think, or
and then
49-48. Yeah, something like that. And I was like, oh wow, like so two judges only gave Usman one more round than Colby. Another judge I think it was 3 rounds Usman, no, 4 rounds to Usman and only 1 to Colby. So I really thought that Colby really showed a lot of heart there at the end. I was surprised. Obviously, the fans around us, they weren't as how should I put this? They weren't seeing what you were seeing, Gilbert. I know you saw, oh yeah, Kobe's coming back. He's getting a lot of good shots. Fans were like, oh, that's not even a good shot. He didn't do anything to him. It's like, no, he rocked him a couple of times, and like, make no mistake about it, like it was nuts. What did you think overall did you think it was a good pay-per-view overall?
No, it's a very entertaining card, and I get jealous as a boxing fan that you don't get these stacked cards in boxing. In UFC, you do. You're entertained for 3 or 4 hours, and that's why, when we went to the bar early, we wanted to get a table just to make sure we sat down. But I was entertained for 3 to 4 hours. We're watching other sports, so I think it was a good card, good main event, good story in the co-main event with Rose winning keep retaining her title because she was actually the underdog. You're surprised to see that she was still the underdog because Wei Lee's a tough competitor, but overall, yeah, that is the picture, man. I can't believe it. Like, I wonder who took that picture, but dang. Just that does not look like Frankie Edgar to me.
No, you know what it looks like? God, like what was that movie where they like a chick. Oh, remember the Scooby-Doo movie with God, what's his Freddie Prinze Jr. and the chick from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Do you remember that Scooby-Doo movie or no?
Never saw it. It looked terrible, by
Oh.
the way.
Oh, okay. Well, there's a part where like this girl like turns into like she's a creature, right? She hits a tree branch and she looks over and her face is all like dismembered and looks all weird. That's exactly the way Frankie Edgar looked in this picture. Like that, like look at that face. Like it is incredible.
I don't know who that is. I can't recognize him.
No, and that's why I had to show it like that. If you guys are looking right now on YouTube, you can see we're showing a picture of Freddie Edgar, just incredible the way his face is. He's eating that kick, but at the same time, he just looks like he's like Scrooge. Like his face just looks bad. But yeah, no. And Gilbert, you're right. I was surprised when I saw that Rose was the underdog. I'm like, how is the champion the underdog? Like they're basically saying that first fight was a fluke.
A little bit, but then sometimes when you're that good and you lose, you come back a little, because you improve, you come a little harder at the opponent, and they probably thought that's what going to happen, but it didn't. I didn't watch that closely because it was the same time as Canelo, but it kind of felt like Rose maybe came at the end. I felt like Whaley maybe was a little ahead on the cards at first, and then I think Rose had a strong finish. But I thought people on Twitter were saying that Whaley might have won the first 3 rounds. So I was a little shocked that it was pretty easy for Rose.
No, the thing is that Whaley would take her down to the ground, but then Rose on the ground would be able to maneuver and do different things so that she couldn't get her. The only time I think she almost got her was in the third round. Yeah, the third round. She started putting her in the chokehold in about with 10 seconds left in the round. So she starts trying to put her in the chokehold. Rose kind of has her arm, but I think her hand kind of slipped, and then she starts putting her in the chokehold, and the round was over. But other than that, I thought Rose dominated that fight. I thought she not dominated, but I thought she did more to win than she did to lose. She had an answer for almost everything that Wailing did, and it was one of those things where you're just like, wow, okay, she knows exactly what to do. But yeah, I mean, Dan and Dago and I were basically your eyes and your ears for that fight, Gilbert, because you were really into the Canelo Caleb-Plant fight.
Yeah, man, I'm mad I couldn't get one TV. They had like 50 TVs and I couldn't get one TV with boxing. But what can you do, I guess, for a dinosaur like me who still watches boxing, I guess?
Not really a dinosaur. It's just that you're still trying to hold on to kind of what boxing was in the past and has been in the past. But we'll get more with more from Dylan Hernandez, see what he thinks about that. But Gilbert, I thought Sunday was such a weird day. Obviously, we meet in the lobby at around 11:45. Can't find an Uber. There's no way for us to get to the stadium, and we're like, what are we gonna do? You came up with a brilliant plan, Gilbert.
Just take the train, man. And in the East Coast, public transportation is much better than the West Coast. So like us LA or San Diego people, we don't think about the train or the whatever, the subway, whatever you want to call it over there. That's kind of like secondary on your mind. But after I think I canceled like 4 Ubers this weekend. We couldn't get an Uber Sunday morning. We were trying to go early to meet your friend Gio, who you could get into in a little bit. But we're trying to go early to meet up with him, and it kind of worked out in our favor because it was kind of a disaster to get an Uber. I think we were trying to leave at 12 o'clock. The game started at 4, so we were making good time. It was 4 hours, but we couldn't get an Uber. One guy was not moving, and I thought it was just kind of, sometimes Uber drivers just don't move because they want you to cancel, and then they don't lose any money. I'm like, this guy's trying to play a trick on me here, and I kept refusing to not cancel. And after like 20 minutes, I'm like, okay, you got me. I canceled. Of course, I get charged $6. Then the second guy, he was the one that canceled. He's the one which I respected. He called me. He said, you know what, man, let me tell you what's going on. There is a Veterans Day parade here that's pretty big in Philadelphia, and nobody's moving on these streets. It's just too crowded. I'm going to cancel. I just wanted to let you know. I'm like, okay, thank you for letting me know. So that was 2 Ubers. And then Uber tried giving me a third one after he canceled, and I got to call Uber. I have a lot of problems with them. I think I had to cancel that one, so I got charged for that one too. It was a mess, and that's when I finally said, you know what, Fernando, I'm sorry, man. We're going to have to start walking and catch his bus or subway, what do they call it at Metro? I don't know.
Metro, yeah.
Yeah, and it was
Metro Boomin want some more.
Yeah, there you go, another song. But it was about half a mile walk to the station. We catch the Metro train, whatever, subway, and it was kind of a little relaxing to kind of be maybe a city person for a day and see how people kind of travel here. And maybe sometimes I kind of wish LA had a metro system like that, but it was fine. There was a lot of Eagles fans. We got off the station to the stadium. They started chanting their Eagles chant, and the stadium was right there, so it was perfect.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, it was one of those things where obviously we jump on and we're like, hey, like, where do we know how to get out? And then obviously we're like, oh wait, just follow all the Eagles fans. It was pretty packed in the subway. And then as soon as we get out, I'm trying to record and I'm waiting and finally I hear EA and I'm like, damn, like I didn't record it in time, but it was awesome to all the Philly fans were so excited. And this is the funniest part. So obviously last week we had Giovanni Hamilton on from Gio the podcaster, great kid. We had him on the podcast and he obviously we had him on twice for the preview show and obviously for regular Compas with Connor Miles from SI. And he was like, yeah, let's see each other during the before the game. And he texted me, I'm gonna be at 4th and what do you say? 4th and John. So John Gilbert is a thing that they use in Philly. I don't know if you've ever heard it. So like John is like a thing, like it's what like this is a John, like whatever's like everything is a John. So that's why on Saturday I put like for my Philly cheesesteak, I put this John is good, just because that's what the way they use it in Philly. I learned that from Creed. If you ever watch, well, I mean, you probably have watched Creed. In Creed, that's what like he's like, what's a John? And Tessa Thompson, I think, is the one that explains to him, this is a John, that's a John, we're John. So it was pretty interesting. I know the lingo, so obviously it's one of those things that you're just, I mean, so it's called 4th and John. So I'm like walking and Gilbert's kind of like, so what do you want to do? Do you want to go into the stadium or what do you want to do? And I'm like, oh, like it was starting to get kind of at that point where we needed to go in. So then I'm like, hold on, let me check something. So I check his Twitter. I see a picture of him that he had taken a picture. I see the angle of where the stadium is in the picture, where a certain building is. And I told Gilbert, he's right here. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, watch. He's on this pathway that we're on. He's like, Gilbert's like, there's no way you're going to be able to find him. And I look and I see him and I'm like, there's Gio. He's like, are you serious? I'm like, bro, no pun intended, eagle eyes. I got eagle eyes. So it was awesome. It was awesome to see him, to be able to hang out with him. And there's Gio, great kid. Met his dad. His dad was awesome. And the dad's like, man, I'm just along for the ride. And I'm like, well, your kid has a bright future. Like, he's such a good kid. And obviously the Compas had to take a picture with him because he is so awesome. So what did you think? I mean, getting to meet him and everything, because obviously Gilbert last week, he was questionable heading into the weekend with that back injury. Wasn't able to jump on either Compas segment, but what did you, that was your first time interacting with him, Gilbert?
Yeah, so it was cool to get to meet Gio. He was like, oh, you're the guy that was questioning. I'm like, yep, that's me, the guy with the bad back. As you can tell, I'm much better. So I'm glad Fernando got to find you out here. I love his what is it, Megatron mask, whatever transformer that is. Optimus Prime, I don't know the difference, but it was a good mask, Gio, and it was great to meet him and his family. So I'm glad it worked out because you know we had kind of disaster with the parade, but the station, the train station was perfect, and then getting to see Gio, it all worked out at the end.
Yeah, exactly. But so Gilbert, I mean, obviously, let's get into it real quick. I mean, obviously, we went into it with the on the pod, but what was your biggest takeaway from Sunday?
That you know, Justin Herbert is back. I guess he never really went anywhere, but it was a great Justin Herbert game. And I started looking at the stat sheet. I'm like, man, this guy only has like 3 incompletion. He's like passing everything, and it was good. You know, I always see the takeaway is that he had 3 touchdowns total and the big bomb to Mike Williams. But I really liked the adjustments that the Chargers made because for 2 weeks things weren't working out, and then I write my story for Sunday saying you need adjustments. You got to figure something out because you can't expect Justin Herbert to bail you out every single week. It's up to you, coaching staff. offensive line to make adjustments, and I saw that. One being from the coaches, having Justin move around, roll out to his left, roll out to his right, because in the 2 games where he lost, or even before that, he creates on the fly, like kind of, something breaks down, he's able to run and make it happen. But it wasn't like, design running kind of bootleg stuff like that. And it wasn't working because he was thinking too much about the coverages. The pressure was too much. He was overthrowing or rushing throws. Now Herbert in his mind knows he's designed to run to his right, which he did on that Mike Williams throw. So I love that from Lombardi and Staley. And then give credit to the offensive line. They protected. And when Justin Herbert is well protected, we all know what Justin Herbert does. He is a top, 5 to 10 quarterback in the NFL when he has plenty of time. So I think it wasn't just a Herbert or one-man show. It was a full team effort. And we try to make Herbert take the credit, say, hey, I try to say, hey, you don't care about the criticism, but was it nice to kind of have a game where you say, hey, I'm still here. I'm still the same Justin Herbert. Obviously, he didn't want to take the credit, and he put it on the protection plan, and it was a great plan overall.
Yeah, no, it was. And I mean, honestly, that's what I told you the other day, Gilbert, that when they play a tough offensive line or defensive line, the offensive line for some reason shows up and they do well. Against Cleveland, yeah, I think he got sacked once or twice, but he was able to. The charge where offensive line basically kept a clean pocket for him against Washington, and then obviously against the Philadelphia Eagles. All 3 have very good offensive or defensive lines, and they were able to kind of hold their own. The interesting part to me was that they finally went back to using all their weapons. Steven Anderson, Joshua Kelly, Donald Parham. They used everybody in this game to really put this team together. And that's the thing that they need to do. If you hear Keenan, if you hear Mike, obviously they want to get their stats, but I think that they'd rather take the W over anything. And this is the kind of game that they need to have moving forward. That's why teams like the Patriots and other teams, Tom Brady, whatever team Tom Brady's on, the reason why they succeed is because they spread the football around. This Chargers team needs to spread the ball around. It can't just be Keenan. It can't just be Mike. It can't just be Austin Eckler. It can't just be Jared Cook. It's going to take, like, that's why I think they say it takes all of us, or I don't know who, all in or whatever. It really is going to take this whole team. It's going to take all of them to really win this game. What are you chuckling at over there?
I'm trying to remember what the saying is, but I can't remember. But I just remember somebody always asking about it, if you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah.
But what is it saying? I forgot it. Or
all in, it takes all of us, something like that. I don't remember what the and it was a question that kept.
Okay, I got it. It's what does our way mean to you?
Our way. There you go. Yeah. Well, I wasn't close then, but it's really going to take everybody on that offense to win these games. Hell, it's even going to take Semino Clemente.
There you
go. It's going to even take him. He came in. He was checking in. Gee, man, I thought he was going to start a damn fire on his chest with how much he was coming in and going as eligible.
What the referee kept saying? On the
68 is eligible, 68 is eligible. But it's crazy because the referee's back behind Justin, and he'd run up to go tell the Eagles 68 is eligible. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, that must be a journey back and forth.
Like 20 times.
But I think that's what it's going to take, Gilbert. It's going to take everybody on that offense to get this going. We saw it against the Raiders. The Raiders decided to take away Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, and other guys stepped up. We didn't see it against Baltimore, and because there was a lot of drops, which Baltimore slowly but surely, to me, is starting to look like a hiccup more and more as I see them play other teams. Then you look at the New England game. They just came out flat. That's the thing that happened. My bad. They came out great in the first half. In the second half, they just fell flat. And it wasn't anything that New England did. It was just that the Chargers couldn't get it going. They couldn't score the points. But in this game, they were able to do a lot. And obviously, I mean, it was pretty good. It was pretty good that they were able to kind of get it going, but it really is going to take a village for this team to make it to where they think they can make it, which is obviously to the playoffs.
Yeah, it was good to see the adjustments that we mentioned on offense, and it was good to see special teams finally make an impact in this game. Dustin Hopkins won the game with that field goal. I know he had a missed extra point, but he made up for it. Andre Roberts was great in the return game. He averaged 24 yards per kick return, but the big concern is still the same old theme of the year is his Chargers rushing defense. They couldn't stop Jordan Howard. I was surprised he was still in the NFL. They struggled with Jalen Hurts as well, being mobile. They got 176 rushing yards, but the thing that was kind of that caught my eye was why did the Eagles stop throwing the ball? I know the Chargers have the worst rushing defense in the NFL, and you want to limit the possessions for Justin Herbert, kill the clock, but Devontae Smith was having his way against the Chargers secondary, a depleted Chargers secondary. There was no Michael Davis, no Asante Samuel Jr. Tevon Campbell wasn't 100%. There was no Aloha Gilman either in the secondary. And I thought Jalen Hurts was outstanding with throwing the ball, especially Devontae Smith. Nobody could cover that guy. Chris Harris and Ryan Smith. Sucks about Ryan Smith with the torn ACL. Another big injury for the secondary. But the secondary had no answers for Devontae. But they decided to go kind of a slow, methodical kind of pace of running the ball. And it worked out for an extent. But, I think if Jalen Hurts gets maybe 30 throws in this game, it could be a different story.
Yeah, no, definitely. Honestly, Gilbert, they saw how much success they were having running the football. Yeah, sure. Sometimes we question ourselves, why the hell are you still running? Why are you still throwing the football? But I got to ask you something. And you and Dan and Dago, for some reason, just keep on, I don't know, you guys like to throw flowers at each of you. Dan and Dago tells me that the Chargers are doing well because he is 3-0 whenever he's in the building for the team. Yet you're right now, a little bit ago, just told me that the reason why they were able to make adjustments was because of your column that you wrote on Sunday. So personally, do you think that Brandon Staley goes out and tells them, let me read you guys a story. Everybody gather up. Let me read you guys a story from the Orange County Register. And then boom, he reads the story and then the team gets hyped. And they're like, okay, we got to do exactly what Gilbert said. Because if so, we need to talk to Brandon Staley about maybe hiring you as their Sunday guy.
No, you know what I think Brandon Staley does? He's running the stairs 3 hours before game time. He sees Dan and Dago way up in the nosebleeds and at Lincoln Financial Field. He's like, oh, Dan and Dago's here. That means a W for the Chargers. I think that's what he went through. He probably doesn't care about my stories there, but
W.
Yeah, he didn't W. So yeah, that is a stat. When Dan Dago's in attendance, he's 3-0. So when the Chargers lose, he's not there. Go attack him on Twitter, please.
That is hilarious. You know what, Gilbert? It's time. We have to go to Dylan Hernandez. Let's see what Dylan has to say about a sport that's near and dear to your heart. Let's see what Dylan has to tell us about Caleb versus Plant. And obviously, let's ask him about the future of boxing. This next guest is a good friend of the show. He makes us laugh in the Chargers Media Center and on road games. I'm talking about our compa, Dylan Hernandez, the great columnist for the LA Times. How are you doing, Dylan? And tell the listeners how much fun you had with us in Washington, D.C., where you found your good friend, Bolt God.
Oh, that's right. Man, God, that feels like 2 years ago, doesn't it? Yeah, so on the flight to DC, I happened to be sitting next to this dude that he was carrying around what does he wear? Like, is it a mask or something? Whatever he had, he was carrying.
Yeah, it's like a get up from like either a video game or a movie.
Well, it was the hat. It's the hat that he
wears.
Yeah. So he was carrying his hat, and so I'm like, hey, so you're traveling for the game, whatever. It turns out he is Bolt God, who's obviously, I guess, among Charger fans, like a well-known super fan. And there was a meetup in DC of all places, in the Georgetown neighborhood, right? And we met up and we went over there. And I didn't know there were 200 Charger fans in Los Angeles. And there were 200 Charger fans in DC partying. So that was kind of an eye-opening experience there. It does show, that right, and LA, and that's kind of the thing with LA, right? It's so spread out that sometimes, a team can have actually a very solid following, but you kind of don't see them because everybody's scattered everywhere.
Yeah, Dylan, we like to have you on the show because we have many road trip stories to tell because you're a pretty outgoing guy, and from that trip, I remember we met up with you and Jeff Miller at some Mexican restaurant, and you're like, "Hey, you guys want to hang out with Bolt God?" I'm like, The Charger super fan, Bolt God, the guy who's dressed like Mortal Kombat.
There it is, Mortal Kombat.
Bolt God right now. I'm like,
Bolt
hey,
God's
why
a really
not?
good. He was, and it turned out Bolt God was a really good guy.
He's awesome. He's awesome.
Jeff Miller, I believe. What was the bet? They bet for that. Was it that game that they bet?
Yeah, that if
Yeah,
Washington won, Jeff had to buy him a shot, and if the Chargers won, Jeff had to buy him a shot.
Right.
So and then he said, if you don't buy me a shot, I'm going to put you in a headlock. So that was an extension of the bet.
Right. So has the debt been paid?
It has not.
Not that we know.
Then I guess I got to go on the road to make sure. I gotta. I'm not okay with people watching on bets, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, we all got to be all four of us to see Jeff Miller. I guess what is he gonna pound? Tequila? I don't know what type of drink Jeff is. He's a marathon runner.
Yeah, he is. I'm not really sure. I remember at that Mexican place actually that where you guys met us, whatever. I actually ordered an entire what is it? Like a whole thing of tequila margarita, right? I got a whole pitcher.
Oh wow.
Thinking we were going to share, and Jeff was like, "No." So I guess somebody had to drink it.
No wonder you were a little more outgoing than usual that day. When you met up.
I was in a good mood.
But Dylan, we wanted to have you on the show to discuss your latest trip to Las Vegas. You were ringside to cover Canelo Alvarez against Canelo-Plant. So we wanted to ask you about that. I guess undisputed fight there, super middleweight, where Canelo took all the belts, but. Dylan, I think we spoke a little bit at a Chargers home game. I forget which game it was, but you're kind of thinking that Caleb has a good chance.
I did until and this is on the record, by the way, so you can go check to see, make sure I'm not lying here. But I started, so maybe about a week before the fight, I actually started watching Plant. Right? I mean, honestly, I don't follow boxing as I used to be one of those people, by the way, that watched everything. Right? Every
like
ESPN show. Tuesday night fights on USA, everything I used to watch, and now I honestly watch very little. I'd seen kind of clips of Plant here and there, and just you look at like the type of fighter he is. He's a movement guy, he's a fast guy, and those are the kind of guys that have given Canelo trouble historically. So I thought like, oh, maybe this guy has a chance, especially because of the size. What I saw though, about a week kind of before the fight, I started watching some of his older fights, and you saw like the quality of competition just wasn't great, and he, because the thing with what speed allows you to do, right? Those fast guys, they always look like they're a step ahead, right? Mentally. And because they can't afford to be, right? Because they're physically so fast, it gives you more time, it's like a hitter, say with great bat speed, right? You can wait just a little bit more, and so Plant had those kind of qualities, but when you saw who he was doing it against, it started looking a little bit less convincing. One thing I didn't like, he has no right hand. I mean, he has a great left hand, or had a great left hand. But the other thing too, what I noticed is, there's a difference between boxing and running, right? Boxing to me is, you're moving a lot, but every now and then you stop, right, at the right opportunity, shift your weight from the back leg to the front leg and actually put something on the punch, and then you go back into moving, Now that obviously requires like a certain understanding of timing. Some guys though, that you see, what I mean by running is they never kind of take the weight off the back foot, right? They're always in kind of position to retreat and never even put enough on the punch. And that's kind of one thing that I noticed about Plant was whenever he was retreating, he was like in full bore retreat. There was never this thing where he could kind of stop and kind of put something on the punch, because people talk about how, say, I mean, we're taking an extreme example here of somebody who's really good, but say Floyd Mayweather, right? You can talk about how Floyd had no power, especially as he moved up in weight, but the one thing he could do was he could hit you hard enough to stop your feet. And the one thing that you saw in this fight was Canelo's feet just never stopped, right? It didn't matter what this guy hit him with. He kind of looked, I actually thought like, this is going to sound really, not great, but like he reminded me a little bit of Conor McGregor, honestly, the way he kind of threw that jab, right? There was just nothing on it. I mean, I think like if you had trained Conor McGregor, had trained as a boxer, say for the last 10 years, that's probably how he would fight, and there was just really nothing on the punches that, right? And so Canelo just kind of kept coming in, whacking him. Now, where these fights get a little bit weird now is, just because of the state of the sport now, unfortunately, there's really, you're lucky if there are two good fighters in one division now, right? And so you have this guy in Canelo who started at 54, went to 60, is still kind of a smallish, if we're going to say it, right? He's 5'8". He's kind of a smallish middleweight, whatever, but he was fine there. And now, at 75, he's fighting guys that are like really tall now, right? And I'm really convinced that if this fight had been, if these guys were the same size, Canelo blows this guy out in 3 rounds. Because he was so big, he was able to kind of withstand the punishment. And, that's the thing is you kind of see, because I don't, you kind of look kind of going forward from here. It's like, who does he fight next? And, Benavidez is kind of the obvious choice, right? David Benavidez, the 168-pound former champion who's kind of at 75, 68, whatever you want to call it. But that's like a really legitimate big guy, right? Now, that British guy that he fought, Callum Smith, was kind of a 6'3" kind of beanpole type guy. But you saw, Canelo-Plant was at least like physically, he kind of played the part, right? He had, broad shoulders. He looked like a much bigger fighter, and he was. And I do think that weight classes exist for a reason, right? And so, you kind of saw a little bit of Canelo maybe kind of hitting that physical ceiling there. And, honestly, I wouldn't blame him for not fighting Benavidez, because to me, that's almost like the Floyd Margarito thing, right? Floyd Mayweather never fought Margarito, and there was kind of like, well, why is he ducking him? Well, it's like, yeah, well, that's a really big welterweight. And Floyd was like a blown up, he was best at 130, I mean, as it is, he's already like fighting 15 pounds north of where he probably should have been anyway. And, again, like Pacquiao fought Margarito and he did win, but there was a price to be paid for that, right? And I think, Canelo, can he beat Benavidez? Of course, sure. But I think that there's going to be residual damage there where he has to kind of start thinking about it. And, so when I look at these fights now, they're all kind of weird, right? They're not fought at the right time, or the guys aren't the same size, or there's something kind of, because the disparity in skill level, I think it was very obvious from the beginning, right? One guy was a world-class fighter and the other guy wasn't. And, because of the size thing, he was allowed to kind of hang around for a while. But honestly, I don't know if you guys saw the fight, but to me, it started getting a little bit tedious, in the middle rounds, where it's like, okay, well, one guy's running, the other guy's just kind of running around. I think what I compared it to was, right, it was like a guy trying to cut down a redwood tree with like a steak knife, because of the size difference, and eventually, yeah, he did chop it down. And I do think it speaks to what a tremendous finisher, actually, right? Some of us were talking about this on Press Row. I mean, he might be the best finisher in boxing since maybe Tito Trinidad, right? Who, once he hurt you, would put you away. He does have that kind of finishing ability because of his discipline. He doesn't get too excited. He's an accurate puncher. He's got a lot on every punch. But yeah, I mean, it is kind of what it is right now.
There was a video, Dylan, kind of circulating during the fight where Caleb is kind of talking to Canelo during the fight, and he's like, "I'm good, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." Well, I like, you think I'm good? Like, you think I got something? Yeah, sure. And do you feel like Caleb was kind of just happy to be there in a sense? Like, it felt like kind of like that. And obviously, that first press conference, he obviously takes a swing at Canelo. Canelo shoves him, he takes a swing at him and everything. But do you feel like that he was just happy to be there, happy to get that payday?
I don't, I think by that point in the fight he was, right? I do think he went into, because, and this is one thing that I wrote kind of going into the fight was, in boxing, cash cows, right, might as well be sacred cows, because it's a sport where, and this isn't literally true, but this is the impression, right, is that 99% of the money goes to 1% of the people. And so if there's a big draw, what you want to do is get a fight with that guy, right? And the last thing that you want to do is actually piss that guy off, because the way he can hurt you the most, his greatest form of retribution, is actually not to beat you up, but to not fight you and not give you that payday. And, we saw it with Canelo and Golovkin, right? In the second fight, Golovkin was talking a lot about how he flunked the drug test, whatever. And, even after 2 fights, I don't know what you guys thought. To me, both of them were pretty even. To me, that felt unresolved. Deserved a third fight. Canelo said no because, and I think it's because Golovkin brought up the drug issue. And, here too, I mean, we forget why this all really started. It was because Plant, right, when Oscar Valdez, who is in Canelo's camp, flunked a drug test, Plant shot off a tweet talking about how, hey, that whole camp is suspicious. And, if we're going to tell the truth, right, that's kind of that whispers around the sport, right? And so I think really that's what set Canelo off. And, you don't go there, right? I mean, because again, yeah, what if there was a close fight, right? Now he's not going to give you a rematch. There are consequences to this. There's a reason, right, with Floyd Mayweather, even after he went to jail and, was pleaded guilty to beating up his ex-wife, no one brought that up. The only guy that ever brought it up was Ruben Guerrero, Robert Guerrero's father, right? And that's because you don't want to piss off the cash cow. And so the fact that he did that, to me, was it showed me this guy's putting his back, because his only way out now, he has to win, right? If he doesn't win, there's no rematch, whatever, he's going to get kind of pushed to the side. And so when he went there, to me, that showed that was, to me, Canelo-Plant pushing all in. And I really think that what this was about, again, was, Plant had been fighting, C and D level fighters. And all of a sudden, he didn't know what it was like to get into the ring with an A-level fighter. And, so once he kind of got in there, now, once he started to talk, I do think there was a little bit of, it had actually somewhat of, it wasn't a hostile, trash talk type thing, right? There was actually kind of I think he was trying to calm the guy down a little bit so that he wouldn't be as pissed, because by that point, I mean, he's getting whacked. Canelo, he figured it out. It was the left hook to the body and kind of that chopping right, to the temple. And it was just kind of a repeat of that over and over and over again, taking a lot of punishment at that point. So, yeah, I think he went into the fight with the intentions of winning. It's just that once you kind of got there, right, it's like a guy who's been facing 85-mile-an-hour pitching his whole life, and all of a sudden, right, steps in the batter's box against Aroldis Chapman, and it's like, oh, crap, right? What do I do here?
Yeah, Dylan, that's a good point of view to kind of sum up this fight. And you mentioned it earlier, it wasn't kind of the best Canelo performance, but he didn't need to be his best to beat Canelo-Plant. When you think about Canelo, you think about combinations, you think about counter punching. That's when Canelo's kind of at his best. You saw that with the Triple G fights there, both fights there. But I want to ask you, because I know you're kind of a tough critic when it comes to boxing skills. And when you talk about pound for pound, who's number one at the top right now, people always say Canelo Alvarez because of the signature victory. He has a nice resume. But for skill-wise, do you see Canelo as the best pound-for-pound fighter right now after what he's done in the last couple of years?
I mean, for a while, Terrence Crawford was my number one. Now he hasn't really fought anybody. That's a good point, right? I mean, he hasn't fought anybody. I don't think at this point is he a Hall of Famer? I would say no, actually, right? Because the resume is kind of thin. He just seems to be able to kind of do more things. Now, that said, I'm not sure. I don't have it in front of me here, but I think he's 33 now. Yeah. And he's fought once in the last 2 years, right? So I don't even, that's the other thing here. I don't even know how good Terrence Crawford is anymore, right? I mean, word around, the boxing people was that he got touched, that he's been getting touched up in sparring and stuff. So we'll get a better idea, I think. Sean Porter, who's going to fight Crawford in, next week or the week after. He's a good, gateway type guy, right? In terms of, or, a gatekeeper type guy in terms of, he's going to make you fight. He's going to kind of test your heart. You're going to need to show a certain amount of skill to kind of get past that swarming style. So we'll see where Crawford is right now. But, even kind of going back to Canelo's resume though, right? I mean, and not, look, I'll say before people accuse me of being a Canelo hater or whatever, let me just say a couple things, right? One is that I have tremendous admiration for his professionalism in that he's a guy who I think had pretty serious flaws when he was a young fighter, even as a celebrated young fighter. He was very much a plotter. His footwork has gotten a lot better over the years. He has not kind of fallen into the trappings that a lot of other guys that, make a lot of money early, right? He's continually gotten better. He hasn't ducked people for the most part. To me, the Golovkin thing was kind of a half duck, right? He kind of waited until he got old to fight him, whatever. But look, he did wind up fighting him. So I have a lot of admiration for him. Now that said, I mean, if you combine, quality of opponent and kind of clarity of victory, what's his best win, right? Because to me, both of those Golovkin fights could have been scored either way. Now, I guess if I were to put up two fights that, this is who this guy is, I mean, those are probably the two fights, right? Which to me kind of shows, okay, yeah, so he was kind of even with an old Golovkin, but in terms of kind of clarity of victory with quality of opposition, I mean, it might be like Danny Jacobs, right? I don't think he might have lost against Lara. That was kind of a close one. Trout, I had him winning, but not by much, right? Obviously, he lost to Floyd. So yeah, you kind of look at those things, and it's like, well, is this? Yeah, there are a lot of great names on it, but did he really? It's not like he really went down and just like cleaned everybody out either. This isn't, Manny Pacquiao, right, in the 2000s, whatever, where he's just kind of going out and just blowing out everybody. So yeah, it's tough right now, right? Because you have these guys. Some of these guys have better. He clearly has the best resume. So I don't have any problem with somebody saying he's pound for pound number one. And then you have other guys like against, the Crawfords, the Spences. I mean, these guys they're not fighting. Because we got to remember, man, even like just the economics of the sport have changed so much where, in the 90s, De La Hoya would fight 4 times a year, right? Twice on pay-per-view and twice on regular HBO, and you take like Canelo's fights in this last year, it's like, okay, well, you know what? Like, yeah, he unified the title, but of those 4 guys, probably the only real opponent he fought there was, Billy Joe Saunders. 20 years ago, is that a pay-per-view fight? I don't think so. To me, that's like a regular Oscar fought Obakar, who was a really, really good welterweight on free HBO, and so, yeah, I don't know. It's everything's just kind of screwy right now. It's really hard for me to kind of say like this guy's better than that guy or,
Dylan, you make me sad for boxing. What a depressing state of boxing is right now.
Well, it is.
Guys are not fighting. Guys are a little older. But you're saying it right, though.
Yeah, and because here's the thing too, because okay, let's look at Canelo, right? I mean, and I guess maybe why I personally have Crawford like kind of higher on the list is like when I think back, because now it's kind of hard again. Like it depends on which weight class you're in, right? And like who's there and whatever, right? And so it's not like any of the weight classes are like that particularly deep or anything. I just kind of look at these fighters and I always kind of think like, okay, if you threw them in against anybody all time, like how competitive would they be? Right now, to me, Crawford is kind of a blown up lightweight. Like, he probably should be at 140 right now, right? He's an undersized welterweight. And I think like he would have, and that's the thing is I think he could have hung in with any 140 pounder, right? Like obviously like De La Hoya would have been just a tough matchup for him at 140 because of the size, whatever. But I don't think he gets embarrassed against anybody, right? He could have hung in there with any, even if it's Chavez, maybe Chavez might knock him out in the, 9th or 10th round, but he's going to kind of be competitive, whereas, if I look at Canelo, honestly, and again, let's go back to like kind of the middleweight, super middleweights of like the 90s. We're talking about guys like Roy Jones. Like he doesn't put a glove on Roy Jones, right? Roy Jones wins every single round. James Toney was kind of an attack-minded, right? Counter-punching, kind of actually has, I think in terms of like fighting philosophy similar to what Canelo did, except he's just a lot better. He was a lot better. Go back and watch. James Toney was a tremendous athlete, fast hands, like just the power, the skill. I mean, he was really fast. People forget, they think of that fat guy that was fighting, at heavyweight. But James Toney as a middleweight, super middleweight, was a monster, man. And like, I mean, right. And any time you see like a really fat athlete, by the way, still performing at a fairly elite level, it actually speaks to what a tremendous athlete that guy was, right? Bartolo Colon, incredible athlete, right? That guy used to be the fastest guy. Every team that he played on, he was the fastest guy until like he ballooned in weight. I mean, these are Juan Uribe, tremendous athlete. These guys are great athletes. So I don't think he beats Toney. Bernard Hopkins, younger Bernard Hopkins was really fast. Canelo doesn't beat him. I don't think he beats Michael Nunn, who's like a name that I think has kind of been forgotten about. But Michael Nunn, if you remember, was like a round away from beating James Toney, right? He was defending his title against Toney, and it basically swept all the rounds, and Toney just kind of like knocked him out at the end. If not, like we would be talking about, Michael Nunn being kind of this, and there's a guy that Roy Jones was very hesitant to fight. He was a tall southpaw. Again, I don't think Canelo touches him, honestly. I really don't. But the whole ecosystem has fallen apart, if we're going to be honest, right? I mean, the way, when I was in college, I actually wanted to be a boxing writer, because that's where I felt like the most honest, like writing was, right? It was very direct to the point. And I still feel like even when I write about baseball, I write it the way the boxing writers, when I was young used to write, which was, guys like Ron Borges and Michael Katz and Norm Frondheim and George Kimball and Steve Springer at the times, they went right at things, but like now, that traditional media doesn't cover these things anymore. It's turned more into, right, a lot of like videographers and stuff. And, some of them do a great job. I think Ali Sekbak does a great job. Marcos Villegas does a great job. But, they're still kind of beholden to these entities for access, right? So no one criticizes anything. And if you listen to the messaging that's coming out of like whatever stories that are written, they echo the promoter like way too much, and you can't listen to like a promoter, right? I mean, when you're writing a Justin Herbert story and say he plays well, do you go to his agent and ask him, how do you, right? I mean, this is like, I've always said, like, never quote a boxing promoter unless he's telling you like a fact, right? Like they are fighting on Tuesday, then go ahead and quote him. But otherwise, never quote but last fight it's going to probably do, I think, between, some of the estimates that I heard, right, on the optimistic end, it was maybe in the 700-800 range, and the low end, maybe 400,000 or 500,000. But this isn't close to being like a million pay-per-view buy thing, right? Because, to get to like a million, it has to transcend. And I can't tell you the number of times where the Dodgers were playing a game as a fight was going on, and they had the pay-per-view in the clubhouse, which is why when the Dodgers were hitting, you would never see anybody on the bench because they were all inside watching the fight, right? Because it still had that. And now people just don't know about this, like Bill Dwyer, the longtime editor of the LA Times sports section, he was a huge boxing advocate, right? You could argue he helped kind of create De La Hoya in terms of, giving them as much ink in the paper that he did, and even, right, he later became a columnist, and even then, like, right, he would, he went to go cover all the fights. A big boxing fan. I had lunch with him last week, and he asked me, what do you got going on next? And I said, I got a fight on, I'm going to the fight on Saturday. And he's like, who's fighting? So here's a guy who like likes the sport, and it's kind of fallen off his radar, and so the whole thing is really just kind of weird right now. I was telling somebody too, and the thing is, right, I do feel that a lot of people that know what they're watching have kind of stopped watching it already because they kind of see it for what it is. And so the people that are still like into this stuff right now, they're kind of buying into the whole mythology of it all, which is great. I'm not like telling anybody not to enjoy anything, but it's weird for me to go there now and write about this thing, because the way I wrote, I was describing this to somebody is like, okay, well, let's just say you have an audience that's like religious, right? I'm going into like a Catholic church, but I write about Jesus, like historical Jesus, rather than, religious Jesus, right? Those are two kind of separate things. And that's kind of what I feel like I'm doing right now, because there's this thing about, he's, the undisputed. It's like, who cares? Like the belts are meaningless, right? Like, but they're trying to create this thing out of like nothing almost, But what you see too, though, is like as soon as these guys retire and there's some distance in time, things kind of sober up, right? Because Joe Calzaghe to me was like a guy that I always kind of thought like, what am I missing here? But his backers at HBO, the Max Kellermans are yelling, "Oh, he's an all-time great," blah blah blah. And sure, at that moment, I think a lot of the fans kind of got swept up in that excitement. But what's happened now? Does anybody think of Joe Calzaghe as an all-time great? Like, of course not, right? Because as soon as we add some distance, we kind of see it for what it is. And I'm guessing that, like with Canelo, we're gonna have a little something like that, right? Because the one thing about boxing is that more than in any other sport, probably, you're defined by your opposition, right? Your opponent, your best opponent, defines who you are. Right. Ray Leonard, he eventually went up all the way to 175 and won a title up there. Right. That's not what we think about. That's not why we think Ray Leonard's great, is because he won a title at the end of his career at 175 or even won at 168. Right. He was great because he fought Tommy Hearns and he fought Roberto Duran and he fought Marvin Hagler, and I think that's how you kind of wind up taking inventory. And, if you take, right, you look at De La Hoya. Right. I mean, for better or worse, the truth is that Trinidad fight defined both him and Tito. We went into that fight, I think, hoping that whoever wins this, was going to kind of elevate themselves into that Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearn strata. And it turned out, right, one guy didn't want to be there. The other guy couldn't get rid of him. And they probably both weren't as good as what we thought they were. And that's their legacy now, And I think when you look at Canelo, we're going to wind up looking back at those 2 Triple G fights, right? Which is he fought, really good fights, very, right, solid fighter, courageous fighter. He stood in there against his killer, kind of same with Triple G. They kind of went at it. One guy might have been slightly better than the other, but they were kind of more or less the same level. And that's kind of how I think we're gonna wind up remembering these guys.
Dylan, I got one last one for you. I may fire you up a little bit with this question, but I have to ask it. Breaking news on Compas on the Beat. Former NFL running back Frank Gore will be making his debut in boxing against former NBA point guard Darren Williams. You and right now you just broke down what's wrong with boxing, but I gotta ask you, what do you think about this matchup?
I don't even know. I mean, I've never seen either guy even throw a punch, right? I mean, the one thing I will say, and when you look at the heavyweights now, right? I mean, the fact that they're trying to sell Tyson Fury as like, look how gracefully he moves for a guy 6'8". It's like, dude, I've seen Kevin Durant play basketball, like you're not going to trick me there, right? Like,
and my bad, they're going to be on the Jake Paul, Tommy Fury undercard.
Yeah. Well, and this is, again, I think it does speak to, I think, a larger problem that boxing has right now, right? Which is they can't sell personality. And the one thing, and I don't even know what's happened, because a lot of these, and like, don't get me wrong, these are like really nice. A lot of these fighters are really nice kids, but they kind of don't have that. Like, that was the one thing about boxing, right? Was that every now and then, right, some crazy guy would come up and he'd be hilarious and you'd be kind of drawn to him for some reason. And even Canelo for that, like, I mean, I think, Canelo's personality, I guess now, I mean, it was kind of more proven over time, right? You kind of see he's the kind of the consummate pro. He's a serious guy. We've kind of gotten to know him by observing him over like a very long period of time. But even like when he came up, it wasn't like he had this like magnetic personality or anything. And that's where boxing has left this like wide hole, right? For like clown stuff like that to happen. Because this is the thing is like, Jake Paul better than any, because, there's a lot of, when you watch people fight, it's kind of about the connection, or even if it's like football, say, right? Like you become a Justin Herbert fan and right. And the stories that you guys put out about him, right? And people read that and I like this guy. I want to, right. I'm invested, right. I can see part of myself in this guy. Yeah. So, right. People get invested in the personality and then it's kind of like, I see myself in this guy. I want to cheer for this guy. There are no real like personalities right now in boxing, and, even Canelo, again, he's kind of been, like when he was coming up, it wasn't the personality that he needed an entire hype machine to kind of bring him up, and that's where I think, unfortunately, that these guys have been able to just kind of take advantage of this, right? Because the truth is, if you saw 2 dudes fighting in a parking lot, you would stand there and watch, right? It's interesting watching people fight. And, there isn't, in terms of like quality, let's be honest, like it doesn't, we've all enjoyed, right? We've seen great high school football games or high school soccer games or whatever, right? Doesn't have to be NFL to necessarily be enjoyable, right? And I'm guessing a lot of the people that tune into stuff like that, they're not like fight fans anyway, And so, the boxing people will kind of defend this by saying, well, those are 2 different audiences. Now, my counter to that would be, well, that Jake Paul fan, 35 years ago, he might have been a Ray Leonard fan, right? Because Ray Leonard kind of had that personality and you would get invested in Ray Leonard. And that's why there were more boxing fans back then than there are right now. As far as that matchup, man, that's a tough one, right? Are they the same weight?
I don't know. I don't even know how they're going to do it because I think Frank Gore's about 230, 240.
Right.
And Darren Williams couldn't have been more than $190 when he played. So I don't know how they're going to do this, but I think the fight's in December 18th in Tampa. So
I mean, I'm
wonder
not
if
gonna lie. Like, I'm kind of like, it was interesting when like Nate Robinson just got flat, right? Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I
hey,
didn't buy it.
Chad Ochocinco was in, or I mean Chad Johnson he had an interesting one too. So it's not it's pretty interesting when these guys get in and do another sport.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, that said, I saw Jake Paul was talking about, like, in all seriousness, and I don't know where this was. I just saw this on TikTok somewhere, but like he was talking about, like, in all seriousness, that he should fight Canelo, saying, "Well, I'm the much bigger guy." Here's the thing, man. Somebody at some point is gonna get hurt doing this. This isn't like a
Well,
joke, right?
he's
Like,
come out and said that he wants to fight Connor too, and I'm kind of like, dude, Connor might serve you up. Like, I wouldn't be asking for I wouldn't be asking for Canelo, or Canelo would knock him out in a round, and maybe Canelo would be like Floyd Mayweather and let him hang around for a little bit and then just go for the big knockout. But I
that
just don't
reminds
think.
me. Reminds me of this column idea I had, 5-6 years ago when Roman Gonzalez was the number one pound for pound guy. Dude weighed like 100 pounds, right? I actually reached out to his people saying, "Can I fight him?" Because he was fighting at the Forum, in Inglewood. So in leading up to that, it's like, well, let me show up to like his training one day and let me fight him, right? And I thought we could take video, because I weigh like more than yeah. So I wanted to fight him, and his people didn't. They thought he might kill me.
Dylan,
I'm guessing he would have hit me once in the body, right? And it would have.
That would have been it.
Yeah. So it didn't happen.
Yeah. No, what a shame. Honestly, you probably wouldn't have been able to hang out with us in DC or Bolt God if that would have happened. So we're glad that it didn't happen. But Dylan, thank you so much for jumping on with us. When are we going to see you? When are you going to appear at a Chargers game next?
I hope soon, man. I actually volunteered to do Saturday, but you guys are getting Helene Elliott over there instead. Oh. So yeah.
All right. Well,
I'll
check out his work. LA Times, Dylan Hernandez. Like we said, he's a compa. He's a friend of the show. Thank you so much, Dylan.
No, thank you.
What a boxing breakdown from Dylan Hernandez. He provided all the details in that boxing discussion. Hopefully we get to see a lot more great fights get made in the next year, because boxing isn't doing too well, as Dylan pointed out. But speaking of fights, Fernando has an interesting feud for Una Mas. Vin Diesel is all about the family, but he's having a Fast and Furious family issues with the great one, The Rock. Fernando, give Hilberto the breakdown. Now it's time for Una Mas.
There he is, Gilbert, your boy, Dan and Dago. Very interesting conversation, obviously, with Dylan Hernandez. Great friend. Hopefully we get to see him soon, Gilbert. I miss Washington, D.C., like he said, felt like 2 years ago.
Yeah, it does feel like a long time. And I know for Dylan, he had to cover the Dodgers playoff run, so I'm sure that's a grind for him. And he was at, obviously, the Vegas fight there with Canelo-Plant. But yeah, maybe we'll see Dylan more now at Chargers game. I think he said he can't make it to this home game. Was it against Vikings?
Minnesota Vikings.
Maybe he'll be at the Pittsburgh Steelers game, Sunday Night Football, kind of a bigger game. So we'll see. Hopefully we see our good friend Dylan out there. Especially we got to try that Japanese food he told us about at the end.
Yep. Gilbert, you know I love wrestling, right?
Yeah, okay.
You know I get hyped. You know I love Fast and Furious, right?
Yeah, I don't know why. There's 9 movies are most of them not that good.
Okay. So you've heard about The Rock and Vin Diesel, their beef, right?
They don't like each other? I thought it was Tyrese and The Rock.
No. They haven't liked each other. So obviously I'm going to give you my version of this. The Rock was brought in for Fast and Furious Fast 5 to revive the franchise. The franchise was kind of teetering at that point. They didn't know what was going to happen. The Rock comes in, and he's obviously Luke Hobbs, and he adds a different dynamic to this. He's a cop or a federal agent who is sent to bring those guys home. Obviously, they go up against the Brazilian cartel. He revived that franchise. Obviously, there was too much beef between him and Vin Diesel that he had to go and make his own movie, which was Hobbs and Shaw. That's obviously with oh my god, I just blanked on his name. Bald
transporter guy.
Yeah. God.
Oh, Jason Statham.
No, not Liam
Jason Statham. Wait.
Jason Statham. My bad. Oh my god, that was terrible.
You said Liam Neeson? Come
That's
on.
something that I expect you to do.
Okay. You're making yourself a fool this time on Una Mas.
No, I know. I'm doing bad, but hold on. So obviously, there's a video circulating right now from Fathom, I think, where they go through the 18 movies of Vin Diesel, and I think all the movies of The Rock, and they come out with who's been a better fighter in a sense.
Fighter?
So yeah. Like who's done more? Hold on, I got it right here.
Done
So
more.
no, they're basically they break down their fights, the fights that they've had.
Okay, not
So-
who's a better actor, better movies.
No. Who's been the more aggressive one? Let me see if I can pull it up. Here we go. So look at this. Oh,
More ass? What does that say?
it says who kicks more ass.
Okay.
So
what's
watch
going on
this.
here?
So obviously they right here, it says that Vin Diesel has landed 625 punches
Wow.
and he's taken. So look at that.
Wow. Okay. So The Rock throws more, but he gets hit more.
Yeah, The Rock has thrown more, but
Hit
he's gotten hit a
ratio.
lot more than Vin Diesel.
Ah,
And so their hit ratio is 3.2 for Vin Diesel and The Rock. So Vin
But
Diesel has
The
hit
Rock has
more.
way more movies, though. You think about it.
Oh yeah. But we're just going off of this. So watch this. So obviously they do this. They go through. I don't even know if I'm allowed to. Okay, there we go. Look at now. Like you like boxing. Look at this.
Knockout. Okay. 155, 89. Films 1830. Okay. All right. Now the numbers are trying to make more sense. Okay.
Yeah. So obviously the
So The Rock's only had 30 movies?
Huh?
I thought The Rock had way more than 30
No.
movies.
So they just reviewed 30 movies of The Rock.
Okay. And 18 for Vin Diesel.
Yep. This is all going somewhere, Gilbert. Don't think that this is just like, what the hell is Fernando doing? Okay, so then obviously here we go to the last thing.
I feel bad for audio listeners. They can't get to watch this video, Fernando.
Oh, my bad. Okay, so obviously we're just breaking down what they broke down, which is obviously in 18 films, Vin Diesel has killed 169 characters. The Rock in 30 films has killed 218. So Vin Diesel has a higher average in 9.39, or he's had 9.39 kills per movie, and The Rock has 7.27. So I thought this is pretty interesting. I watched the whole video. I thought the whole video was interesting.
Does Vin Diesel actually even kill people? Like I think he just knocks them out.
No. Remember, he has that shotgun in Fast and Furious, and bang, he just takes people out and does all that. Okay, so this is what it's leading to. Are you ready?
All right.
So Vin Diesel took to Instagram, and this almost made me cry, Gilbert, because where is it? He sent a message to The Rock, and it says, "My little brother Dwayne, the time has come. The world awaits the finale of Fast 10. As you know, my children refer to you as Uncle Dwayne in my house. There is not a holiday that goes by that they and you don't send well wishes. But the time has come. Legacy awaits. I told you years ago that I was going to fulfill my promise to Pablo, which is Paul Walker, the late great Paul Walker. I swore that we would reach and manifest the best Fast in the finale that is 10. I say this out of love, but you must show up. Do not leave the franchise idle. You have a very important role to play. Hobbs can't be played by no other. I hope you rise to the occasion and fulfill your destiny."
So it sounds like there's like a contract dispute, and maybe The Rock needs more money, and Vin Diesel's putting pressure on him to, hey, don't be the bad guy and just accept the role and come know your role, shut your mouth, kind of thing.
I think people see Vin Diesel as the godfather of these movies. Like he's the one that created this. He's the one that did it. But then they say The Rock saved your ass, and I feel like that's what he doesn't like. He does not like that people said that The Rock saved him.
It sounds like they're actually kind of friends there by saying his kids call him uncle. Like I don't really understand the whole feud.
So the feud was basically The Rock thought that Vin Diesel was holding him down. So The Rock felt like he could have been even better during movies, but obviously Vin Diesel didn't want to be outshined by The Rock. So that was my criticism of Fast 9. I thought John Cena's character could have been even better, but I think he was kind of holding Cena down a little bit because he didn't want another wrestler to come in there and kind of outshine him. So I feel like that's kind of the beef there between The Rock and Vin Diesel. There's a lot of beef.
So when was the last time The Rock was in one of these Fast and Furious movies?
Fast and Furious 8.
So you
8.
he only missed one.
Yeah.
Okay, and now the whole thing is like let me use my dead friend to convince him to come back for number
Oh.
10. It's a little low blow, no? A little.
No, because I mean, obviously, like, how do I put this? No, I don't think it's a low blow, but it's just like, hey, like,
It sounds
we
like a
fulfilled.
tactic. I don't know. It just seems like he's going a little low for these tactics to convince them to join Fast 10.
Well, God, you're a different kind of human being. No, I.
What do you mean? He's pretty much like guilting him. Hey, my friend who passed away, can you come do this and take whatever money they're going to offer you? I don't really like this move for Vin Diesel. Now that I think about it, Fernando, now that I have the backstory, I'm with The Rock here.
Well, I think that they should obviously. No, I think that The Rock needs to come back for this. I think it's been too long.
You got to get paid, man. When you're the star, get him to write the money.
John Cena's a star. I think what he's trying to tell The Rock is, hey, dude, like, let's squash all this crap. Like, it's stupid that we're fighting in the first place. Let's do this for Paul Walker. Let's finish this series out. Which I hope it. I hope
Did
it's
he
not the end.
respond at all, The Rock, to this post?
I don't think The Rock has responded.
Right.
I hope though I hope it's not the end of the franchise. I love Fast and Furious for some reason. Like, they could do all kinds of weird crap and I'll still watch it.
I hope it's the end, Fernando. It's
you don't even watch the movies.
It's enough.
10. You don't even watch the movies. But obviously, but I will tell you this: Hobbs and Shaw will continue. They've already said that they're starting to plan number 2 and then possibly number 3. So Hobbs and Shaw will continue. It's just, what are they going to do with this Fast and Furious franchise? That's gonna be interesting. But there's one last thing, Gilbert, I got for you.
Jesus, Fernando.
No. It all coincides. So, I love wrestling. And right now, who's the biggest star in WWE? Your tribal chief.
No, Brock Lesnar. Nah.
Your tribal chief, and you're the advisor to the tribal, the right hand to the tribal chief. They're the biggest stars right now in WWE. Paul Heyman and Roman Reigns are obviously the biggest. Well, Roman Reigns is the biggest star right now in wrestling. Well, guess what was asked this week? So The Rock was doing interviews for, I don't know what the hell, probably a new movie. And he was asked if God, commercials. He was asked if he would come back and fight in wrestling. And obviously The Rock kind of looks and he goes, oh, well, in an interview with comicbook.com, Dwayne Johnson was asked about the possibility of having a match with Roman Reigns. The two consider themselves cousins, but they are not technically related by blood. To boil it down, he said maybe. I don't know if I have another title run, but possibly there might be another match down the road. It would have to make sense. Obviously, The Rock is 49 years old. Roman's 36. But this is something that's been brewing for a while, Gilbert. Because obviously, I went to where was it? Well, okay, let me ask you first. What do you think about the possibility of this?
Well, this matchup?
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of like the idea that they're cousins and they're family. Why have them fight each other when they're family? But I know UFC, WWE has like these weird family feuds also. But I don't know. The Rock's 49. It's okay. I'm sure it would do well, but it doesn't really kind of move the needle for me.
So, well, I guess to me, this is obviously something that I've been kind of waiting to see. So a couple of years ago, Gilbert, when I was still at NBC, when I was at NBC in San Diego, I had an opportunity to go cover WrestleMania 37. They were announcing WrestleMania 37 was going to be at SoFi Stadium, which WrestleMania 37 was last year. Pandemic hits and everything. But this is a clip that I got from Roman being asked about potentially facing his cousin.
And where's the clip?
I said it earlier, man. If there's a stadium, the whole DJ, check it out. Not bad, right? I mean, whether it's everyone's always dream matching me and him. First of all, we're family, so it's all love. But if there was going to be an event for him to compete in, to perform in, a venue to hold that mass scale of attention that he's going to bring, it's right here in your backyard. You know what I mean? You ain't got to go far.
Wow, exclusive. 3 years in the making, Fernando.
Bro, I had it first. I just think it'd be interesting to see.
Isn't that WrestleMania like 2 years from now?
No, WrestleMania 37 was last year.
Yeah, I know, but he's
So
saying,
my bad. WrestleMania 37 should have been this year in Los Angeles.
but now it's like in 2 years.
It'll now be in WrestleMania 39 will be in LA.
So it's an option, you know, it's there. Just 2 years from now, though.
I think they're going to try and move it up to this WrestleMania. It's in Dallas at Cowboy Stadium.
Another big stadium, so I could see that too.
Yeah, so I could definitely see them doing that. But man, to see Rome, I mean, I think The Rock would need a warm-up match because there's no way you can step in with the tribal chief and just wrestle him.
Yeah, but that kind of just takes away the whole like luster of like, oh, The Rock's coming back. I can't wait to see The Rock. And you bring him, give him a tune-up match, it kind of takes away some of that appeal.
Well, fine, but take the championship off of Roman then.
Why? What do you mean? Like,
if Roman has a championship,
oh yeah, he's not gonna lose
and he fights The Rock for the championship, there's no way they're gonna give it to The Rock. And if they did, he'd probably drop it in a month.
Yeah.
So I would need something where I don't know who's gonna win, but I kind of would know who's gonna win because I think the legacy of this is trying to build up for the legacy of Roman Reigns. Roman's already beaten John Cena this year. He's beaten Brock Lesnar this year. It's kind of cultivating to bring him up and be like, hey, he beat The Rock now. Like he's really he's beat The Undertaker. He's beat all these guys. So I just think it's interesting. I know that this Una Mas was kind of all over the place, but I everything coincided with everything. So
you just tricked me because you wanted to have a whole wrestling segment. You were mad that we got UFC and boxing. You wanted.
I'm not. We hadn't talked wrestling in a while because there hasn't been a pay-per-view. Huh?
You tricked me. You went into the Fast because like Fast and the Furious felt like an Una Mas topic, and then you went to wrestling topic. Like wow,
it was just that was a quick like, oh, this would be an interesting match. It just came up like yesterday, I think, where he was asked if he would go back into the ring against. I'd
rather see The Rock and Roman Reigns than Frank Gore and Darren Williams. So there you go.
Hey, that's interesting though. But I mean, I would love to see The Rock and Roman Reigns go at it. I just wish it was in our own backyard and not all the way in Dallas because I kind of do want to be in person for that one. But it'll be interesting to see if maybe the Compas can be out there for WrestleMania week. Maybe we do something. Who knows? You never know where the Compas are going to end up next. But anything else you want to add, Gilbert, before we?
No, this is a long one más, so let's end it, Fernando. I am ready for week 10? It sounds kind of weird to say we're in double digits now for weeks in the NFL, so I'm ready for the Chargers and Vikings week.
Guys, do not forget we have a special guest coming on this week for the Chargers Vikings preview. We're excited about it. Obviously, we will have your post-game reaction from SoFi Stadium. And obviously next week, who knows who the Compas are going to get on. So definitely be on the lookout for that. But we're definitely excited for all the stuff heading. Thank you guys so much for rocking with us. But Gilbert, you know what? It's time. Vámonos.
Ya nos vamos, pues vámonos.